Well, the inspiration for this message came Wednesday morning. If you know me, I probably struggled with that a bit because I'm a big planner. But the inspiration came Wednesday morning, and it really came from one simple statement in a book and two stories from this book. And lights came on for me. I saw fasting in a whole new way. And so my prayer today is that you will also see fasting in a whole new way. This message is, I guess I'm thinking it's one of preparation for this series. And I just really want to just share it the way it came to me. And I'll probably ask you a question that God asked me, but we'll get to that later. So, the first story comes from the book of Numbers, chapter 11. I'm going to give you the where and the who in the story. Now we're going to fill in more details later. The where is the wilderness of Mount Sinai. The who are the children of Israel, the Israelites. This group of people that God has chosen to work through, to reveal who he is to the world, and ultimately to bless all the nations, because the Messiah would come from this group of people. These are who the people are in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. There's one other group that's mentioned. They're called the mixed multitude. And they are those who have intermingled with the people of God. Maybe through marriage, maybe when the children of Israel left Egypt, they decided they wanted to go with them because they saw God among them. They're the mixed multitude. Okay, let's start reading the story in verse 1. Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. For the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some in the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of that place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. Now, the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish that we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic in Egypt when we were slaves. But now our whole being is dried up. There's nothing at all except this manna before our eyes." And I feel like the author, who many believe is Moses, the author of Numbers, just takes a couple verses to describe this manna. This manna was like coriander seed, and its color like the color of bdellium, which is kind of golden. The people went about and they gathered it. They ground it on millstones. They beat it in the mortar. They cooked it and made cakes of it. Its taste was like the taste of pastry prepared with oil. And when the dew fell on the camp in the night, the manna fell on it. Okay, now just think about that for a minute. When they woke up in the morning, where the dew was, there was manna. Just let that sit there a minute. Their needs were being met. They were being fed. God was providing. Oh, Moses. Then Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. Moses was also displeased, and I can understand. And I think there's a little, we won't read the verses that follow this, but Moses is actually done. He's done with this group. He's like, did I birth them? Am I supposed to carry them? Like, he's so tired of them. And the Lord hears his frustration, and he provides leaders to help. But what happens next is God actually responds to their craving. Their needs are being met, but they're craving meat. And he responds. And he actually lets Moses know the plan and tells him, here's what I want you to say to the people, Moses, because I'm going to give them what they're craving. I'm going to give them meat so much that they will regret asking. So these are his words to Moses to say to the people. You shall say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat. You shall eat, not one day, not 2, nor 5, nor 10, nor 20, but you will eat for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have despised, another translation says, rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever come out of Egypt? This is all about craving. Moses is not sure how this is going to happen, because this is what God's just told him he's going to do, and he's like, this is a lot of people, and where are we going to get that much meat? And basically God says, watch me. Verse 31. Now a wind went out from the Lord, and it brought quail from the sea, and left them fluttering near the camp, so ready to literally be captured. Left them fluttering near the camp, about a day's journey on this side, day's journey on the other side, all around the camp. 2 cubits above, that's 3 feet above the surface of the ground. That much quail. Look at what the people do. The people stayed up all that day, all night, all the next day, and gathered the quail. He who gathered least gathered 10 homers. You probably don't know how much that is, but lucky for you, I know. The least gathered 10 homers, which, equivalent to today, 475 pounds of meat. And they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people. And he struck them with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had yielded to craving. This story reminded me of when our family first moved to Bloomington. We moved from a small town in southern Minnesota, Winona, and basically 2 restaurants, Burger King and McDonald's. We got a Culver's just as we were moving. But when we got to Bloomington, we could not believe the opportunities for food in this area. And I know you're not going to believe this, but what we really fell in love with was White Castle. Seriously, now when we moved here, all services were held in Bloomington. And so we would get done with church and we would head down Lyndale. Me and Tom and Tommy and Nate in the back seat, and we would pull into the White Castle on Lyndale. And you'd pull up and they'd say, "What you craving?" And we would go, "Oh, we're craving sliders." And sometimes we'd add pickles, and sometimes we'd add ketchup, and sometimes we'd double sliders, onion chips. Like, we would have our bags of sliders. And we went to White Castle many times after church. We were living our best life. Till one night, I got home and I was not feeling good. I feel like my stomach was just like, boop, like it had just ballooned out. I felt terrible, and I said, "What do you think are in those sliders anyways?" So, needless to say, we quit craving White Castle. I don't even know the last time we've been to the White Castle on Lyndale. When I finished this story in Numbers, Wednesday morning, I grab a cup of coffee, I come upstairs, and Tom and I begin to chat about this series that we're getting into starting today. And he begins to read this introduction from a book. Simple introduction, but the author, Elmer Towns, makes this statement in the introduction. "I want you to hunger for God more than you hunger for bread." Now, I don't know if it was that I was on my second cup of coffee or revelation, but lights came on, and I was like, "Tom, that statement. What if in this fast, and I see that empty plate, and I feel the hunger, denying myself, crabby, weak, what if my hunger for God would be stronger. I had just finished this story in Numbers, and I felt God ask me, what do you crave? What do you long for? I do want to fill in a few details. This story in Numbers is literally 13 months only. Just a little over a year since they have been set free from Egypt. A little over a year, and in that span of time, not only did they watch the 10 plagues that came on Egypt, not only did they walk through the Red Sea on dry ground, but they have seen the cloud during the day that shaded them, that directed them. They've seen a pillar of fire at night that kept them warm. And they've got manna. Their needs have been met. And not only that, but they just finished the tabernacle, which was basically God saying, I want to live in the middle of you people. Does it make sense why God was angry? He's meeting their needs. He's living in their midst, and yet they are longing and craving food, meat. They're romanticizing Egypt. And he gives in to what their flesh is craving, but he sees that craving and that longing as rejection of him. In that moment, was not he enough? If there's anything they wanted more of, shouldn't have been more of this glory that we just witnessed at the dedicating of this tabernacle. More. And so, this series that we're getting ready to move through this month is Hungry for God, Closer Through Fasting. So now I ask you, what are you craving? What are you longing for? What if you, like me, we could take that statement that Elmer Towns made, and we could go into this fast, this time of fasting, and say, I want to hunger more for God than I do for bread. So I was like, I want to, but I know what it feels like to be hungry. Really hungry. Could I hunger more than those feelings? I was, to be honest, I wanted it, but I was still not sure that would happen. I might want it, but would that happen? When I look at that empty plate, would the hunger for God be stronger than the hunger I'm feeling here? And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking about that. I'm like, is it possible? And this phrase, just phrase from Scripture, just like kind of floated by me. And I was like, I don't know where that is, but this was the phrase. My flesh longeth for thee. Just those words. And I'm like, okay, where is that? Who said that? Because basically the person writing that was saying, my flesh longeth for thee. So that's the second story. I found where it was. The where is the wilderness of Judah. The who is a man who is running, hiding. He's being chased by his enemies. He's confused. He's exhausted. He's wondering why this is how the story is playing out, because he is literally in hiding from his enemies. And he describes the wilderness of Judah as, this is a dry land. And he's hungry. He's actually hungry because he's exhausted and he's running, and he couldn't stop by REI and pick up a backpack with food provisions for the journey. He just had to get out of town. And so in this wilderness, hungry, thirsty, exhausted, weak, how does he respond? The children of Israel, whose needs are being met, craving. David, who's running and hiding and hurting and starving. His response is in Psalm 63, and I want you to look at it with me. This is his response. O God, thou art my God. Early, when I wake up, I will seek you. My soul thirsteth for water? No, thirsteth for thee. My flesh longeth for food. He is hungry. And what does he say? My flesh longeth for thee. In this dry and thirsty land where no water is, what do I hunger for? To see thy power and thy glory right here in the wilderness, just as I have seen when I've been in the sanctuary. Because your loving kindness, it's actually better than my life. I don't know if I'll survive this, but your loving kindness is better than my life. How? My lips shall praise thee. I'll bless you while I live. I'll lift up my hands in thy name. This next verse, you got to take this in. David says, my soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness. Now, those are weird words. But in that day, that referred to a scrumptious feast, like good meat, good, just like plenteous and delicious. He says, my soul shall be satisfied as with a scrumptious feast with him. And my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips. When I remember thee upon my bed, so now it's early in the morning, and as he's laying down at night, when I meditate on thee in the night watches. Because why? He realizes, you have been my help. Therefore, in the shadow of thy wings, not knowing what my future holds, I can be here and rejoice. Basically, what David is saying is, I'm hungry for God more than I'm hungry for bread. This series that we're in, Hungry for God, I believe that each one of us, his church, can draw closer through fasting. You're going to hear about 3 different fasts over the next 3 Sundays. We're going to talk about the disciples fast, which is one, because often sin can separate us from God, and we need deliverance from things that are separating us. That's the disciples fast. We're going to talk about the Esther fast. The Esther fast is protection that comes from God when we're under his authority. We're going to talk about the Samuel fast, which is one of revival and refreshing, and we are following that message. We are going to fast together at the end of the month. And then is Easter Sunday. 28 days away, we will celebrate Easter. But today's message is one of preparation. I'm going to invite you to stand. One of preparing our hearts for this fast. Because there are powerful things that happen with fasting. There are deliverance, healing, provision, protection. But could today's message and our response today be, I'm just hungry for you. Not what you can do, but I'm hungry for you. And when I see the empty plate, I feel those hunger pangs, and I don't want to deny myself. I'm craving food. I want to get rid of this feeling. Could a hunger for God sweep in and be stronger than the hunger in my physical body? A longing just for him. In just a minute, I'm going to ask you to sing a very simple song with me as a church. Maybe you thought when we read Numbers, you were like, that was so harsh, plague and fire. People died. People were buried because of craving. Maybe that seemed harsh, but do you ever think about the heart of God? And when I read it that morning, I was judgmental. How could they respond like this? But we have been delivered. We have been set free from Egypt. We're free. Our lives are blessed and wonderful, and he was right in our midst today. And yet, when I enter that fast, I'm like, oh, kind of dreading this. How different am I? What if today his church would respond like David? What if we would say, all we need is you. All I need is you. Will you sing it with me?
All I need is you. All I need is you, Lord. Is you, Lord. All I need is you.
You're enough. You're enough.
All I need is you, Lord.
I hunger for you.
Is you, Lord. All I need is you.
I hunger for you. I hunger for you.
All I need is you, Lord. Is you, Lord. All I need is you.
I'm just going to share one more thing. It's the choosing. When I am fasting, there's no supernatural thing that happens all of a sudden I'm not hungry. But it's the choosing. It's when I don't give in to what I crave. And there's this moment, and there are moments when it's so hard. And I don't feel any supernatural thing that just comes down, but I can't explain it. When I push through, and all of a sudden I experience him in such a way that I'm like, I do crave this. You know what I'm craving, Lord. And you caused me to realize the beauty of all I need is you. And so my last thing is when you fast, it's not going to be just this, but if you'll say no to the craving, to the flesh, all of a sudden, you're going to experience what David's talking about that doesn't make sense. All we need is you. Let's just sing that one more time as a church body. All we need is you.